On today's video, we got Mahomes injury news. We're going to do a recap versus Jacksonville. We're going to look at Buffalo versus Cincinnati and give you a sneak peek at the AFC Championship game. Stick around.
What's happening, Chiefs Kingdom? The Kansas City Chiefs took down the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round and moving on to the AFC Championship, which will be hosted in Arrowhead Stadium. But looming in the back of everybody's mind is that Patrick Mahomes ankle injury that he suffered after a hit from Arden Key in the game. Mike, what have they had to say about that?
Yeah, so it was confirmed today. MRI confirms it was a high ankle sprain. If you know anything about ankle sprains, this is the one you don't want. Now, there was some reports confirmed when Mahomes was leaving Arrowhead last night. They couldn't see that it was taped. He wasn't in a boot. They said he wasn't even physically limping too much. If you watch the game today, Tony Romo spoke about it. He said high ankle sprains are pretty devastating. It really is. He said that usually you can play through the game, but when you wake up the next day, it is sore and you don't usually walk. You may have to use crutches. So we don't really know what's going on with Mahomes today. I'm sure with that much of an investment, the Chiefs are going to have trainers with him around the clock. They're going to get this taken care of. But yeah, going forward, this ain't going to be the same Patrick Mahomes we're used to seeing. He's going to have to be more of a pocket passer, and he is going to lose a little bit of mobility.
Right. Well, most people that have a high ankle sprain, they'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks. But Patrick Mahomes is superhuman. We all remember this from when he had the kneecap incident against the Broncos. He came back way faster than was expected. So let's hope that he heals good this week. I saw where his trainer, Bobby Strope, had put on Twitter that he's going to have a long week. So obviously there's going to be a lot going on there for recovery and everything like that. But I think Mahomes will be in a decent place. Obviously, I don't think he'll be 100%, which does suck considering it's a AFC Championship game, a rematch with the Bengals. Like, we would like to have him at 100%, but Mahomes 75% is better than no Mahomes any day.
Every time we play the Bengals, it seems like something's weird. We never get Mahomes 100% Mahomes in the second half versus the Bengals any time. So it's nothing new. I just hope this time the ankle don't cause him to be 50%. Then we only get 25% Mahomes in the second half. Hopefully we overcome this and we get back in it. But yeah, that's the thing looming in our minds. Good win versus Jacksonville, I think. Let's talk about that. But yeah, in the back of our minds, you know, it's the Mahomes injury. We're all worried about it a little bit, and hopefully he gets through it. It's going to affect his practice this week too.
Right. Well, he didn't have like a huge game or anything against Jacksonville, but he did what he had to do to win the game. We also had the good drive from Chad Henne, who came in for one drive, and or he might have been in for two, but he had the one specifically that was 98 yards for a touchdown to Travis Kelce. That drive to me was all about Isaiah Pacheco. I feel like the run game definitely helped this team secure this game, and I feel like that's what they're going to have to be looking at going forward with an injured Patrick Mahomes. Am I right, Mike?
Yeah, totally. We're going to have to rely on the run game. We've been calling for that all year. Pacheco is a new back. This is playoff time. He runs hard. Let's get him the ball. I thought Jerick McKinnon looked pretty good in some of his limited opportunities running the ball. We still have Rojo. It's possible they can bring up Clyde at some point. We do have a running game we can rely on. Our offensive line does run block really well. I think that's something we do need to rely on, especially now that Mahomes is not so mobile. Maybe we don't drop back and throw the ball 40 times a game. Andy and Eric have to adjust to that one specific thing. I don't feel like they wanted to adjust to it in the Jacksonville game. They looked a little hard-headed, to be honest, in the second half. Mahomes was still slinging it a lot, and it was like, what, we could be running the ball here. But yeah, I thought before Mahomes' injury, I thought Mahomes looked really good, man. He was doing Mahomes magical stuff. Kelce, what a game from Kelce. And then, as you said, Chad Henne, when he had to come in, he put the team on his back, took us right up the field, and that's what Henne gives you. We said that in the game. That's why you had to keep Henne. And yeah, it worked out. Anything is possible, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so looking at that running game a little deeper, it looks like Isaiah Pacheco had 12 carries for 95 yards. Huge day for him. He was getting 7.9 yards per carry. He did break off that long run, which I think was about 39 yards on that drive with Chad Henne. Jerick McKinnon, he struggled running the ball, but he helped obviously in that pass protection. He was definitely like Mahomes' right-hand man there for a while after Mahomes suffered that injury, making sure that he didn't get touched. He only rushed for 25 yards on 11 carries. And then other than those guys, obviously Mahomes scrambled 3 times, and then you had Kadarius Toney got a carry. Noah Gray had a carry on that sneak, and then Sky Moore got a carry for 3 yards. So I think overall about 30 carries in the game. I can live with 30 carries. Maybe in this game coming up, though, Mike, we do know that the Cincinnati Bengals always dare us to run the ball. That's kind of the defense they like to play against us. So maybe we'll see more than 30 carries. I'm not for sure. I wouldn't bank on it because it's Andy Reid. But it looks like Isaiah Pacheco was having a day, man. And I think he could have another one.
Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco looked really good. Again, I'd like to see Isaiah Pacheco get 25 carries. I think if he gets 25 carries, I believe our offense is rolling at that point. You just got to take a little bit of heat off Mahomes. Now that he's not so mobile, he's not so agile. He's not going to be able to get out of the pocket. He's not going to escape those tight pockets. Cincinnati will adjust their defense to keep him in the pocket now. But now you don't have to worry so much about him getting out of the pocket. They're going to bring people at our offensive line all day long. They're a good defense. They'll get after it. They'll find a way to use this against us. They made the Bills look pretty bad today, like in certain times. Josh Allen looked horrible. They'll do the same to us. It's a good team, and we'll see. But let's talk about the defense a little bit versus Jacksonville. A lot of people are still down on the defense. The defense only give up 20 points total. And to be honest, one of those touchdowns come off of a special teams blunder where Butker had to make a touchdown saving tackle. So if you take that away from them, that's somewhere around 13 to 20 points is what the defense allowed. I don't think that's all that bad because Jacksonville had a pretty good offense out there.
Well, if you think, Mike, I don't think that the Butker save was on the first one, actually. I think the first one was a pretty good return that got them in position to score a touchdown, and the Butker one came later in the game. So I think there were two times they had returns on kicks that were just absolutely unacceptable, where they just broke it off and had a short field. But if you just look at it overall, it looks like they went for 349 yards total. So we capped Jacksonville to 349 yards, a little bit more yardage than you would want to allow. But if you're just looking at passing altogether, they only passed for 205 yards. We had trouble stopping the run. It looked like ETN was averaging almost 7 yards per carry. We had trouble getting to the running backs initially. Like they weren't getting hit up front by the defensive line, and our linebackers were just a little slow getting there sometimes. So it looked like they were getting about 5 yards per carry before they even got touched. So really, in my opinion, that was the weakness this game. I think the secondary looked pretty good overall. They still let up, a lot of throws in the middle of the field because that's just what happens when Nick Bolton is in coverage or George Karlaftis has dropped back into a coverage or something like that. That's just good matchups and good mismatches by the offense at that point, just kind of going along with what Spags is doing and throwing different looks at them and keeping them on their heels like we talked about before the game. He did just that, and I think they adjusted a few times and made some good plays. But overall, man, I thought the defense won this game. The offense, obviously, Mahomes had that injury, and then they sputtered quite a bit with good reason. Not saying it wasn't because, he was hindered and couldn't be as mobile, but that's definitely the way it looked to me. I thought the defense stepped up when they needed it. Jalen Watson made that huge interception. Frank Clark played lights out. I mean, it was just a good defensive effort overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think going into the game, going into the postseason, Chief fans knew that if we were going to struggle, it was coming down to our pass rush not being consistent, us not stopping the run, and special teams. And all of those reared its head in this game. We got out of it, but it all reared its head. Butker looked better. Townsend punted the ball well, but that punt, not punt coverage, but kickoff coverage let us down a few times. And then when you want to get to the defensive line, only Frank Clark done really well rushing the passer all day. Maybe Colin Saunders on a few, but Chris Jones was held in check all day again. Chris Jones gets to the playoff. He disappeared. Now, again, they're doubling them. They're tripling them. But that's what happens with good players. Aaron Donald gets through that. You don't tell me they're not doubling, tripling Aaron Donald. So he can find a way to do it. Chris Jones has to find a way to do it. And we've got to get a hand on a running back. It didn't matter if it was Hasty or Etienne. They both were going 4 and 5 yards before they were even getting a hand on them. You've got to stop that. Joe Mixon will run all down your throat, and Samaje Perine right behind him will do the same. Those two guys run hard. And as bad as the offensive line we thought was going to be for the Bengals today with all those replacements, that was actually a strength. They dominated Buffalo in the trenches. And if they do that with us, they're going to come out of Arrowhead with another win. We've got to get stronger in the trenches offensively and defensively. We got to seal up these special teams errors. And that should do it. We should be able to win if we can do that.
Right. Well, let's go back and look at the pass rush. You were talking about Chris Jones. Didn't get his sack, obviously, but Chris Jones produced a lot of pressure for getting doubled over and over and over again. I think he actually had a decent game, but he's got to get there to finish in the playoffs. That's all there is to it. There was a play very reminiscent of the play in the Bengals AFC Championship game last year where he got all the way to Joe Burrow and pretty much had his hand on him and didn't sack him. It was almost identical. It happened to Trevor Lawrence Saturday during the game. And he's just got to finish. Frank Clark got a sack. Derek Nottie got a sack. Other than that, that was it. But it looks like most of the damage to me was done on the ground, man. 144 yards rushing for them. So they almost had as much rushing yards as they had passing yards on the day. So I think they definitely got to focus on that run game because, like you said, Joe Mixon and Perine are a much more experienced and probably better running back duo than Hasty and ETN. So, I mean, that's definitely something that we're going to have to focus on this week.
Yeah, outside of the defensive line, I thought maybe the next part that struggled a little bit, our linebackers wasn't in the right spot a few times. Nick Bolton and them, they were getting a lot of bodies on them. They wasn't filling the holes very well. And then on the back end, I thought our safeties didn't look very good. We let up a lot of big plays to Ingram. There was a time Christian Kirk got behind both safeties and just dropped a pass that could have been game changing. So I think Justin Reed, Thornhill, even Nick Bolton, they all need to step up their game a little bit. You can't come out and have that same performance against Joe Burrow. They will eat us alive. But yeah, man. So speaking of Joe Burrow, let's move on to that Buffalo Cincinnati game. You watched it. What did you think about it, Steve?
I thought it was complete and total domination by Cincinnati. They were just the better team. And like you said, they won the game in the trenches. They absolutely dominated. Joe Burrow looked like a much more calm, collected, and better quarterback than Josh Allen, hands down. And of course, they have weapons like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So, I mean, overall, the Bengals are just a really, really good team. They're a solid team. Joe keeps his cool in pressure situations, and they just went out there and executed, man. And from what I was watching, P. Ryan and Joe Mixon were running hard and with a purpose. So I mean, it was just an all around really good game for the Bengals. And like you said, they had a banged up offensive line, so like third stringers in there at certain positions. And what did they do? They ran the ball because that's what you do to help. A backup offensive tackle or something like that. We're going to run the ball. We're not going to put the pressure on you to keep these edge rushers off of the quarterback.
I think the Chiefs need to learn from that a little bit. It'd be so much nicer to come out and just control the clock a little bit, keep Burrow off the field. I think that's a big thing. But yeah, we've seen in this game, Josh Allen looked lost at times. He did not look like the MVP candidate that they were preaching to us all year long.
Nah.
I think anybody that thought he was an MVP over Mahomes at this point, you're out of your mind. But yeah, Burrow's a good quarterback. They proved it. Again, the first time we played Cincinnati, it was one of those things where I don't think anybody really knew the full Cincinnati team. It was, well, are they this? Are they that? The offensive line hadn't gelled. They were, he was getting sacked a lot, but they've actually proved themselves from that game. They've proved themselves. They've proved that they are one of the top dogs here in the AFC. They proved they're ahead of Buffalo right now because they would have beat Buffalo in week 17 if they'd have kept playing that game. I'm convinced of that one. If they come into Arrowhead and beat Mahomes again, second straight time at Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game, I don't know how you don't say they're not the class of the AFC at that point. The Chiefs have a lot to play for here. Pride is one of them. You cannot keep getting kicked by the same team over and over and not have a little pride. Frank Clark's out here talking about it don't matter who we play, bring them on. Hey, it's time to put up or shut up. This is a big game coming up. We're not going to touch on it too much because we've got all week for that. But just giving a look at it right here initially, this is going to be a dogfight, and the Chiefs don't show up, and we don't come out and play with the intensity that we criticized them for the first time they played in December. You got to get up, you got to get it for the game, and you got to smack them in the mouth because they're coming to smack us. It's that simple.
Right. And they can come into your house and beat you. They did it just last year. And this Bengals team this year is much better than the team last year, hands down. I think if I still look at it overall, I still think the Chiefs have the slight edge on the better roster, better team, all around better coach. But right now, the Bengals are playing much better than the Chiefs have been playing. If you just look at those two teams, the Bengals look much more scary than the Chiefs do, especially with Patrick Mahomes not being 100% going into this game. So it's like you said, man, it's going to be a dogfight, but it's just going to have to be, an Arrowhead playoff game. The crowd's going to have to get involved. We're going to have to play with some intensity. And like you said, play for some pride because this team has beat you 3 times in a row, and including this game last year. So now's your time to get your revenge, get over that little hump that you can't beat the Cincinnati Bengals, and go ahead and make a play for the second Lombardi for the Chiefs in the last, 4 years?
Yeah, totally agree. It's on the coaches too. You've got a banged up Mahomes. You can't put too much on his plate. You got to find ways to strategize and to make plays that benefit this team outside of Mahomes a little bit. I know we live and die by Patrick Mahomes, but it's time for everybody to step up and earn a paycheck this week for sure.
Absolutely. And the Bengals use that same shell defense that they use on the Kansas City Chiefs to beat them every time. They used it on Buffalo today. It was effective on them. I mean, by now, the coaches have to have an idea of what they need to do to beat that defense. And I think the big red flag is run the ball, man. They're literally daring you guys to run the ball. I noticed when Buffalo ran the ball today, Singletary or whoever, it was pretty effective, but they just went back to the pass over and over again. And of course, they like to let Josh Allen keep the ball too much. I don't know what their obsession is with letting their franchise quarterback get hit 40 times a game, but that's just what they like to do. So the Chiefs are just going to have to run the ball, man. I think that's the main thing, and that'll open some other things up. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of the same that you've seen the last three matchups.
Right. So, okay, let's move on to the NFC really quick. Nobody really cares too much about the NFC, but it looks like it is going to be the Eagles after they trounced the Giants. And then it looks like Dallas found a way to lose versus the 49ers, which everybody kind of thought, even though Dallas was a good team. I think the four best teams in football are playing. So that's one thing. The four best teams in football are playing this weekend. It's going to be a good one on both sides. Steve, did you see anything in the NFC that was out of the ordinary, or are you just like me? It's Eagles, 49ers, class of the NFC.
Right. I think that's the only two teams in there that I really would consider to be as good. I don't even know if I'd say they're as good as the Bengals and the Chiefs, maybe the Eagles. But the 49ers, of course, they're like the hype team right now. They're like the hot team in the NFC. To be quite honest about it, they did not impress me at all against Dallas. I thought that game was pretty much, a coin toss the entire time up until the end of it. So they're not scary to me. I think the Eagles are probably going to hand their butts to them. So I think if we can go in and beat the Bengals on Sunday, I think that we're going to be looking at a Kelsey brother Super Bowl, in my opinion.
That's what I was just going to say. I'd love to see the Kelsey brothers Super Bowl. I'd love to see that whole intricate storyline with Andy Reid and the history with the Eagles. That just makes a lot of sense. But again, Burrow's not a pushover, and the 49ers are not a pushover. These are going to
No.
be hard fought battles this week. That's all there is to it. And we're going to get you a lot more content for that throughout the week.
It feels good to have that first playoff game out of the way, though, and get the dub there. All respect to Jacksonville. They came in and played their butts off, and they played a really good game, put up a big fight. They weren't supposed to be there anyway, so respect to Trevor Lawrence and crew. They handled themselves perfectly, and they just lost a tough game. But on to the Bengals, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk more about that. Until then, catch this video right here. It's what YouTube thinks you would like to watch. Make sure to get in the comments, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell, and we'll be back tomorrow with more on your Kansas City Chiefs.
See you guys. Go Chiefs.
There goes a sight from my soul.